Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to this installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open, the floor, as they would say, is yours. What do you guys want to talk about? That is what we are here to discuss today. My name, of course, is John Campea. Good to have you guys here. Hello to everybody already in the live chat. Good to see you. So listen, Open Mic is, as we said, the show where you really are the program director here. What topics, what issues, what questions do you want us to talk about today? That is what we're here to do. Now, on the John Campea show, Monday through Friday on the John Campea show, the way you get a question in on the show is by sending in a question to the tip link. But here on Open Mic, you have to be watching live. So if you're not watching this show live, you can't send in a question. But if you are watching live, you can use the super chat feature and send the question is. The super chats are open right now. I'll let you know before I'm about to turn them off. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. Anyway, guys, see me donning my, I got my Kings jersey on here today. Ann and I, after the show, we're going to drive into downtown LA and go to the LA Kings game tonight. I think they're playing the St. Louis Blues. Anyway, so we're going to go meet up with some friends and go watch the Kings game tonight. So I'm all dressed up, ready to go. King Daddy goes, so I'm watching the Lakers and Celtics later. Nope, I'm not watching that game because I'm going to be at the LA Kings game. So they're on at the same time, so I won't be watching the Lakers Celtics game a little bit later. All right, that down, guys. Let's get things going here. I'm going to start with this. Yesterday, knowing I was going to do an open mic today, and knowing that I always like to start with a topic to discuss for a few minutes before we get into the live questions, I got on the chat section on the YouTube channel, and I asked the viewers, what topic would you like to hear me discuss tomorrow? And one of the ones that came in I thought was really interesting, and it was about Daredevil. And they asked, hey, John, do you think Marvel may have made a mistake by connecting Daredevil to the Netflix series? Because they followed up, I feel like people who didn't, after watching the first two episodes, they said, I feel like there's a lot of people who don't know what's going on in this show if they didn't watch the original series 6 years ago. Is that how long ago it was? When was the last season of Daredevil? Was it 6 years ago? Anyway, 6 years ago, that if they didn't watch the original series 6 years ago, they might feel lost today. And I thought that was an interesting question. Because some of you may remember back when they originally started making Daredevil Born Again, the new Daredevil that's on Disney Plus, it was not going to be connected to the Netflix show. It was still going to have, Vince D'Onofrio playing Kingpin. It was still going to have Charlie Cox playing Matt. But that was it. It wasn't actually the same Daredevil from the series. And guys, for like 2 years, I try to explain that to people because of everything Charlie Cox said. Charlie Cox made it very clear that this wasn't the same show. It was a new Daredevil, even though he and Vince were still playing the same characters. And I tried to explain for like 2 years. 2 years. I'd say, well, it's not the same Daredevil as in Netflix. And for 2 years, I had people writing in daily, calling me all kinds of names, saying, John, you're so stupid. Of course it's the same. This is the next season of Daredevil. It's the same because Charlie's back. And anyway. So finally, when they decided to go back and reshoot the whole thing, they made it public. Before it wasn't going to be connected to the Netflix series, now it is. And Vincent D'Onofrio just did an interview like last week saying, yeah, just confirming the show we were originally shooting was not the same Daredevil as Netflix. Anyway, 2 years of crap I took from people for saying that. Anyway, that aside. So they did decide to connect it to the Netflix. So now the Daredevil we're watching is indeed the same Matt, the same Daredevil that was in that Netflix series. The Kingpin we are seeing in this Born Again series is now the same Kingpin doing there. And a lot of people were very happy about that. And I liked the move too. I mean, I was perfectly okay if they did a new version of Daredevil with the same actors. I was okay with that. I was perfectly okay with that. But I did like the idea that they were going to connect it. And, you know, leading up to Born Again coming out, a lot of people, you guys know, if you watch the show, a lot of people wrote into the show and say, hey, John, do you think I'm going to need to go back and watch Daredevil? Because I never saw Daredevil before. Do I need to go back and watch it in order to watch Born Again? And I said, you know, I don't think you do. Because Kevin Feige, other than a couple of times they got it wrong, Kevin Feige, for the most part, does a really good job. Does a really, really good job of catching the audience up within the show itself without making you have to do homework. I mean, yes, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that required that you watch. Yeah, there have been a couple of times they messed it up, but for the most part, Marvel does a pretty good job of making sure, hey, if you're just sitting down to watch this, you'll be okay. So I told everybody when they would write in, do you think I need to go back and watch Daredevil? I said, you know what? I'm going to guess you don't. I think you're going to be fine. But you know what? I don't know if a lot of people were fine. Case in point, I had Ray, you know, because Ann and I and Ray were watching Daredevil. So I asked Ray if he wanted to do the after show with us. And he was gracious enough to say yes. And it became really clear that Ray was kind of lost. Because he only saw season 1 of Daredevil. But I had said, you know, I don't think it's important that you catch up. I think you'll be okay. That's what I told everybody. But it became pretty clear that Ray was a little bit lost. And then I started getting emails from people saying, hey, I tried to watch Born Again, but I don't think I understood half of what was going on. Like, I feel like a lot of stuff that was happening in the show was inside baseball that I would have had to have been a part of the club to have gone back and watched the original Daredevil series. And so it made me start to wonder if, and I'm just saying, it just made me wonder. It just made me wonder if this new Daredevil Born Again is alienating viewers who didn't go back and do 6-year-old homework. Listen, I admit when one of my guesses is wrong, and I guessed that you wouldn't have to watch the original series to watch this. But after talking to Ray and then hearing from a bunch of people who watched the show and then going back and watching a little bit of myself, it's like, hey, would I have got that scene if I didn't already watch season 2? And it makes me wonder, like, especially with where the MCU is right now. The MCU is still kind of rehabilitating its image, right? Great stuff with Deadpool and Wolverine. Everybody's excited about the Avengers movies, but still, Marvel is still kind of, and I wonder if putting out a show that is alienating a lot of people might not have been the best move. Like, remember, I was all for it. When they announced they were connecting it to the original show, I was like most people. I was like, yep, this is a good idea. Yep, I'm for it. So I'm not pointing fingers here because I thought it was a good idea too. I still think it was probably a good idea, but it is alienating people who didn't watch the original show. Now, I've heard some people raise the point and say, well, it's basically Daredevil season 4, and it is. It now is. It wasn't going to be, but it now is basically Daredevil season 4. So of course you gotta kind of expect that you need to go back and watch the first 3 seasons. And I would agree with that if Daredevil season 3 was 2 years ago. Maybe even if Daredevil season 3 was 3 years ago. But the reality is, and again, guys in the live chat, correct me if I'm wrong. The reality is that Daredevil ended 6 years ago. I'm saying 6. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was 5, but I'm going to say 6 until somebody corrects me. But actually, Aaron is saying 7 years. 7 years ago. So, like, I get the idea that, hey, it's season 4, so you got to watch the first 3 seasons. But I mean, we're literally talking about a show that went off air 7 years ago and started 10 years ago. We're now literally asking audiences, you need to go do homework to watch this show. And that's never a good idea. You know my opinion of that. I think it's never a good idea when you put the audience in a position that, hey, if you want to appreciate our product, you got to go do some homework, and about 40 hours worth of homework. That's never necessarily a good idea. And again, this is not me second guessing it. I myself said this is a good idea to connect it to the original show. All for it. But the reality is, there are a bunch of people who maybe weren't on board with the MCU 8 years ago that are kind of on board with the MCU now. And, oh, MCU's got a new show, Daredevil Born Again, cool. And they're watching it and they're feeling left behind. They're feeling alienated. And is that price tag of alienating a certain percentage of your potential audience, and this isn't a rhetorical question, I'm asking this honestly, is alienating a portion of your potential audience worth the price in order to connect it to the original show? Or maybe they just should have done a better job of doing this show in such a way that somebody who didn't watch the first 3 seasons might not feel lost. Anyway, like I said, one of our viewers wrote that question in yesterday, and I thought it was a really interesting question. Because, again, I was sat there doing an after show with somebody who didn't watch all 3 of the original seasons, and a new piece of content shouldn't make you feel left out. And he was clearly feeling left out. And I've heard from some of you guys who are like, yeah, I didn't quite understand what was going on. And is that a good idea? So yeah. Now, there's some people like Rick in the live chat is saying, I didn't watch the first 3 seasons, but didn't feel lost at all. I've also heard from people like Rick who also felt good, but I heard from more people than I thought I would saying they felt like they were kind of missing the point of a bunch of stuff because they didn't watch the original show. And who knows, maybe that's something that they start to address as the episodes go on and as the season progresses and as more shows come out, that somebody who's a newbie, who's a novice to Daredevil might start to go, oh, okay, yeah, now I feel up to speed. Now I feel I know what's going on. Maybe we just need to give it a few more episodes and give them a chance to get the audience caught up. And maybe that's it. Anyway, again, I just thought it was an interesting question. And I think it's one worth discussing and one worth thinking about. Anyway, guys, if you have any thoughts about that, go ahead and jump on into the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. All right, guys, with that down, let's get on to the main part of our show here, shall we? Which is taking your live comments and questions. And we're going to start things off here with Dwayne. And Dwayne writes, hey, John, who is your favorite Invincible side character? Oh, that's easy, actually. Mine has been Cecil, especially this season. Are you caught up? I am all caught up with Invincible now. I watched the latest episode last night, actually. So I'm now all caught up. And I absolutely 100% agree. My favorite secondary character in the show is Cecil. I like Rex. I like Adam Eve. I love the mom. Actually, you know what? I think Mark's mom is a very underrated character. I think it's a very, very underrated character. And I really do like the character a lot. But Cecil is easily my favorite side character. And I think the reason Cecil is my favorite side character, and maybe this is getting a little bit inside baseball, but I think the reason I find myself relating a little bit with Cecil, because the shows always try to help us relate with their characters, is because Cecil's the guy in charge. And he's desperately trying to get the job done. He's trying the best he can. Usually he makes the right decisions, not always though. Sometimes he makes the wrong ones. But there's a job that's got to get done, and everybody else around him has different opinions about how it should be done, and then everybody second guesses him, and even Mark ends up hating him because he's not doing it the way Mark wants to do it. But Cecil doesn't believe the way Mark wants to do it will work, and he's in charge of saving the world and blah, blah, blah. And I think the reason that resonates with me a little bit is having been the head of AMC Movie News and having been the head of Collider Video and being the head of the John Campea YouTube channel. I have certainly felt over the years, and sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, I've been right to do the way I've done things, and sometimes I've made mistakes, sometimes big ones. But I gotta say, there is always things, people don't like decisions I make, but I know I'm doing it for the good of the team. I know I'm doing it for the good of the company, but people disagree and all that. Or sometimes people complain about things, but there's things I can't say. Like I can't respond to that person because that would be breaking the trust of somebody else, and I can't do that, you know? And so I find myself a little bit sometimes identifying with Cecil, that you got to be the guy in charge. And I'm sure most people have been in a situation where they've been in a charge of a situation, or they've been responsible for a situation. So I'm sure I'm not the only one. But you're Cecil, and it's like you have to make the right decision because the consequences are too high if you don't. And everybody else just wants to complain at you about why you're doing what you're doing and the way you're doing things you're doing them. Yet you got to just do it anyway, even though they get mad at you. Anyway, there's a whole lot with Cecil there. And so that's why I think Cecil is such a great character. I think Cecil is such a great character. Anyway. All right. Next up, we got Arun, who writes, "Hey, John, are you watching Invincible Season 3? Just talked about that. And Harley Quinn Season 5. Thursdays are my game day now with both Invincible and Reacher on the same day. By the way, I am also all caught up with Reacher. I'm not saying this is the best season of Reacher so far, but I'm really liking this season of Reacher. I am really, I love this season of Reacher. Love it. I think it's... I love, you know what? And it works so well because we know we've already been through a couple of seasons with him. You know, we've already been through a couple of seasons of Reacher. So we've gotten to know the character. We've gotten to know what he's about. And I've been loving it. Anyway, so yes, I am keeping up with Invincible. I have not kept up yet. I have not kept up with Harley Quinn. Not because I don't love Harley Quinn. I do love Harley Quinn. I've watched the first 2 episodes of this season and I really enjoyed them, but I haven't kept up. And because I'm trying to keep up with Reacher, I'm trying to keep up with The Pit, I'm trying to keep up with Severance, I'm trying to keep up. Did I already say Invincible? Can't remember if I said. Anyway, I'm trying to keep up with Invincible. What else am I trying to keep up with? Anyway, Harley Quinn is just one of those ones that's kind of slipped through the cracks for me. So I'm going to try to keep up with it a little bit later. All right. With that down. Next up, we've got Jerome, who writes, "Do you think the Oscars should start turning off the mic when actors go overtime in their speeches? And should they have turned it off on Brody?" Yes. Yes. By the way, I love Adrian Brody, 2-time Academy Award winner. He's phenomenal. I love him in just about everything he's in. He's great. I'm not trashing on Adrian Brody, but what he did at the Oscars should never happen again. Like, I get that you have a lot you want to say. And I say this with all due respect, because like I said, I'm an Adrian Brody fan. You guys know I've been an Adrian Brody fan for almost my entire career. But I understand you have things you want to say. Guess what? Everybody who won an Oscar that night had things they want to say, and yet they respected the rules and respected other people's time. but I have important things to say. Then say them in the time you're given. I don't care if you want to talk about epiphanies about how fame can be fleeting. I don't care if you want to take the time to thank your wife. I don't care if you want to make political statements. I don't care, whatever. Say whatever you want to say. Say what's on your heart. You have a platform. Great. But say it within the time frame that you and everybody else was given. And I'm sure this is not what was on Adrian Brody's mind. I'm sure this is not what he was thinking. But whether he was thinking it or not, the way it played out was, I'm more important than everybody else who won an award tonight. Me. I'm more important, so I get to be the one to talk as long as I want. And if the Oscars want to stop me, they're going to have to create a scene and send security up here. And so everybody just felt awkward. Like, I remember he was going on and on and on, and I'm like, okay, I got to go to the bathroom. So I got up, I left Ann and Ryan in the living room. I went to the bathroom, washed my hands, came back out, and I'm like, he's still talking? He's still talking. Yeah, it would have created an awkward moment, but they should have just turned his damn mic off and cut to commercial. It would have created an awkward moment, but now you've set a precedent. Now somebody else is going to think that they can get away with doing that. Anyway, again, and I am not trash. I'm not meaning to trash on Adrian Brody. I think all the adrenaline's rushing. He made a bad decision. And that's fine. We'll get over it, right? I'm still looking forward to seeing what he does next, right? All that kind of stuff. But yes, the Oscars should have turned his mic off. 100% they should have. Anyway. All right, next up. We've got Super Saiyan 13 who writes, hey, John, how is Mickey 17? Didn't see it. I'm looking forward to The Amateur. Oh, I'm very looking forward to that. Black Bag, me too, and Working Man this month. Last Breath was good. Dogman, not so much. Sorry, Ray. Yeah, Ann and I were supposed to go see Mickey 17 on Thursday. We had our tickets. We had a 3:30 screening on Thursday. Now, we took our two dogs in. I explained this on the John Campea show, but we took our two dogs into the vets in the morning, and we figured we're going to be able to pick them up at around 1:30. Well, then they get a hold of us and say they're not going to be ready to be picked up till 4. So we end up having to cancel our tickets. And yesterday, you guys know, was a very busy day for us. Didn't have a chance to go. Today, we're going to go to the Kings game. Can't go. So I'm hoping tomorrow I'm going to finally get around to going to see Mickey 17, because I've been looking forward to this ever since CinemaCon. Anyway, The Amateur. Again, they showed us a big presentation of that. Rami Malek back at CinemaCon back in last April. Can't wait to see that. Black Bag with Michael Fassbender. Cannot wait to see, and Kate Blanchett. Can't wait to see that. So yeah, but I haven't had a chance to see Mickey 17 yet, but I'm very much looking forward to it. All right. Next up. Let's see. We have Taki75 writes, saw Borderlands, and while it's definitely not a good movie, it's nowhere near a Morbius level dumpster fire. It's just an uninspired Guardians ripoff. I think it's more than just an uninspired Guardians ripoff. I think it's truly awful. But I think I agree with you that it's not like Madam Web awful. It's certainly not Craven awful. There were worse movies, but it was really bad. It had a few good, listen, I know it's not cool to mention positives about movies that everybody hates. I know that's not the cool thing to do, but it's often lonely being right. And there were positives in that movie. Borderlands had some upside. There were a couple of funny lines. There was a couple of really interesting visual things done. It had a couple of moments. But yes, overall, it was still pretty bad, man. It was still pretty bad. All right. Next up, Tom Weinberg writes, R.I.P. Gene Hackman, love him in The Quick and the Dead. Yeah, I mean, we've spent most of the week waxing poetic about the greatness of Gene Hackman and going over all of his greatest movies. Again, I really want to encourage everybody, if you have not seen Mississippi Burning that he does with Willem Dafoe, make sure you watch Mississippi Burning. It's one of his best. I think his absolute best is Unforgiven, but a lot of people have seen Unforgiven. There's still a lot of people that have not watched Mississippi Burning. Go watch Mississippi Burning. Anyway. All right, next up. Taki75 writes, if Taskmaster is killed off early in the movie, I assume you're talking about Thunderbolts, then why even bother including her in the first place? Just to dispose a character hated by fans? No, Taki. There are lots of movies where characters die early. The key is, does the death of the character propel the story forward? Does it create an emotional anchor? Does it create an experiential moment? All that kind of stuff. There's lots of reasons. Like if Taskmaster's in it and Taskmaster dies, like say in the first 20 minutes, then I'm willing to bet that the director has a narrative purpose for it. So like you're asking, why have her there in the first place before you've seen the movie? I can't answer that question before I see. Like if she survived the whole thing, you could ask, why have her there if she's just going to make it all the way through the movie? Well, I don't know. Got to see the movie before I can answer that. But I'm pretty sure Taskmaster isn't just going to be there and the Thunderbolts are sitting in McDonald's and while eating a chicken McNugget, she chokes and dies pointlessly. Although that would be funny if they did that. No, there's going to be a purpose for her, right? There's going to be a purpose for why she's there. And if she dies, we don't know that she does, we suspect she will, but if she dies, I'm sure that's going to have a narrative purpose as well. That's going to have a reason for it in the story, either for a sacrifice she makes, or it'll start a domino effect of a series of events that leads to something else, or it creates an emotional anchor for the other characters to rally around for whatever reason. But there will be a purpose to what she does in the story. And there should always be purpose, whether it's an action a character makes or dying. There needs to be a purpose for it in the story. And so if you're asking, why even have her there? What I would say, Taki, is, well, watch the movie and find out. You know what I mean? So let's see how that all goes. All right. Next up, we've got NK, who writes, I enjoyed the first half of Mickey 17, but the third act wasn't the best in my opinion. The performances were all really good, except for Mark Ruffalo. See, again, we had to skip it on our screen on Thursday. I've heard Mark Ruffalo's fantastic in it. That doesn't mean you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying other people I know who have seen Mickey 17 said Ruffalo was absolutely brilliant in it. But there's a great example. All film is subjective. It didn't work for you. All right, but I know myself, NK, I'm really looking forward to going see it. All right, next up. Mighty Tank 1 writes, when people think of Kingpin, they always bring up the car door. I think the give me your jacket scene in season 3 is my favorite. So unexpected. All good. All good. I think when I think of Kingpin, like the Vincent D'Onofrio Kingpin, I don't know why. The first image in my head is Kingpin and Frank, Punisher, both in prison, both in their orange jumpsuits. And like we know Punisher is this ultimate badass, right? I just think of that scene of Kingpin standing and Kingpin just towering over him. Like, you're adorable. Oh, you're the Punisher? Oh, good. Patting him on his little head. Oh, good for you. Look at you. You're the Punisher. I'm a monster. And just like, to me, that was the moment to me. You know what that was to me? That was the Thanos beating up the Hulk moment. It was like, if you didn't know, now you know. And it's like really establishing this awe of the presence of Kingpin. So that's the thing to me that comes to mind when I think about it. All right. Let's see. Next up, we've got Mega Red, who writes, one of two. John, I am shocked we know more about Secret Wars than Spidey 4. Please, Have you heard anything about the direction they could be taking? To me, Tom Hardy, Venom battling, encountering Spidey. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can get the second part. I'm having a little trouble getting the second part of your question up here. Give me one quick moment. I should be able to fix it. Let's see here. There we go. Okay, I got it up here now. Okay, I'm shocked. Let me start again. I am shocked that we know more about Secret Wars than Spidey 4. Please, have you heard anything about what direction they could be taking? To me, Hardy, Venom battling, encountering Spidey, that would be a terrible idea, I think, at this point. Via the multiverse makes the most sense. I disagree. Just revive Venom via the multiverse, but that's just pure speculation. Or maybe a sort of Doomsday Part 2 with various Avengers supporting characters. Nah, this is going to be a... If there's anything I really think about Spider-Man 4, is that it's going to be a Spider-Man movie. It's not going to be a Spider-Man and 6 characters from the Avengers swinging around with them. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we won't get any level appearance from any other character. I'm not saying that, but like a Doomsday Part 2, no, I don't think they're going to do that. I really do think they're going to finally give us a street level kind of Spider-Man, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, as Rob would say. I really think we're going to get that. Now, I don't know that. I haven't heard anything. And anything I have heard has been from completely unreliable sources. So I don't even mention it. I don't even talk about it. So no, I honestly really don't know whether it's going to take place in Battle World, whether it's going to be told out of the timeline, like in a different non-linear order, whether it's going to happen. I mean, I just don't know. I really don't. I haven't heard anything, but I don't think they're going to be bringing Venom into it. And I don't think you're going to see like 5 or 6 characters from the MCU all come behind in it too. So yeah, I don't know, but I doubt it. But and I'm not surprised we haven't heard anything about Spider-Man 4. You know why? Because it's getting totally overshadowed right now by obviously Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. That's where everybody's attention is. So, and that's a good thing for Marvel. It's a good thing that everybody's totally overlooking Spider-Man 4 right now. That's the way they like it, and that's the way they're going to try to keep it as long as they can, I'm guessing. All right. Next up, let's go to Mickey Veach, who sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Mickey. I appreciate that very much. And Mickey Veach writes, I still think about the 1-2 punch of Collider Heroes episodes where you had Adi Shankar have his brain circuits fried on air, and then next week you had Max Landis going full Karen for a few minutes. Ah, the good old days. Yeah, that was interesting. By the way, a big thanks out to Jace for gifting membership to somebody out there. Thank you for that, Jace. Appreciate that, man. The Adi Shankar is not the most memorable thing of my time at AMC Movie Talk or Collider Movie Talk, but it's one of them. It's up there. And you know, that the funny thing is, I kind of wish Adi Shankar was a dick, because then I could just make fun of him for that interview. But he was a really nice guy. Like, he came in early. He hung out with us in our conference room and just sat around and chatted for a while. Then we went and did the show. And it was a bit of a disaster, and then after the show, he hung around a little bit longer and talked a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, he was really nice, but that was, for those of you who don't know what happened with the Adi Shankar thing. Adi Shankar, who was a producer of the Castlevania animated series, and he was a producer on Judge Dredd, the Carl Urban Judge Dredd, which I loved. But for those of you who don't remember, it was one of the most awkward, Wallcroft remembers, it was one of the most awkward episodes ever, because it was literally like me or Schnepp would ask him a question. Hey, you know, what do you think about this and doing this and the possibility of this? And the camera would go to Addy and he'd be like, and then longer pause. And we're all just sitting like, yeah. And then he would give his question. Then he would give his answer. Okay, great. All right. Then the next question. Well, so Addy, do you think maybe in the future something like this could happen? And literally be like 30 seconds of dead air. And it was like that for the whole show. The whole show. And again, I kind of wish he was a dick so I could mock him about it, but he was a really nice guy. And I think he just honestly, this is why he's a behind the camera filmmaker, but I think he was just honestly trying to give a truly thoughtful answer. I think in his defense, I think he was just trying to give a good answer, and he didn't want to speak too quickly and maybe say something he shouldn't have said, but it came across as so awkward. The Max Landis one was interesting because, again, like Addy, I had never met Max Landis before this, right? So he came in, and again, actually, I really liked hanging around him. He was like really nice. Now, a lot of pretty disturbing allegations and things like that have come out about him, and what was true and what wasn't true, I have no idea. All I can say is, regarding Max Landis, is that in the very limited exposure I had to him, my experience with Max was quite positive. Again, I'm not saying that to take away from any of the other drama that's gone on surrounding Max Landis at all. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm just telling you the truth. My limited experience with him was quite positive. Was quite positive. It reminds me, and I won't say names, it reminds me of another time that a certain online personality got themselves in trouble, and people got mad at me. I remember this. I literally had people get mad at me because I didn't come out to condemn this person. Because what I said was, like, guys, I'm not saying any of the accusations surrounding this person are real or not real, true or not true, and I'm not trying to speak to what other people's experiences with this person was. I just said, all I can tell you is that my experiences with this person were all quite positive. That's all I'm saying. That's the truth. My experiences with this person were all quite positive. And people got mad at me for that. But so I don't get mad at me because I'm telling you my experience with Max Landis was positive, because that's the fact. That is the truth. Again, not meant to say in any way, shape, or form that other people's experiences with Max may have not been all that good or not. I'm just telling you what my perspective was. That's all. Anyway. So, but yeah, that was an interesting time. That was definitely an interesting time. All right. Let's keep going here. Thanks for that, Mickey. Next up, we've got Simon Section says, hey, John, with Sony's rights to Spider-Man, I remember you saying that we wouldn't hear the words Ben Reilly. I said that was my guess. Like, I don't have insider information saying that we wouldn't. I just say that was my guess. Saying that we wouldn't hear the words Ben Reilly. But we did hear Kingpin saying Spider Custom. You probably meant Spider Costume. Please educate me. I don't want to burst my bubble. We was talking about Spider-Man. He was talking about Peter Parker. Remember, this Daredevil now is now in the MCU. Wasn't before, but it is now. And so Spider-Man's haunt is New York. So if Kingpin is going to give a speech about vigilantes in costumes, you can't do that without at least mentioning Spider-Man. And it's kind of funny that he didn't even say the word Spider-Man, but he said swinging around in a spider costume, right? So that had nothing to do with Ben Reilly. That had nothing to do with Ben Reilly. That was all Spider-Man, Peter Parker. So yes, nothing to do with Ben Reilly. All right. Let's see. Next thing up, we've got, thanks for that, Simon. Next thing up, we got is Raymond Verada, who writes, even not having watched the Netflix series, I enjoyed the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again. Life is too short. I'll take what I can get. Yeah, you know what? And I think, Raymond, that's a lot of people's attitudes. Again, look, for people like me who would go, why wouldn't you watch the first 3 seasons of Daredevil? It's awesome. And it is. I think we got to remember it has been 7 years since it's been 10 years since that show started. There's a lot of people who have been around the MCU for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 5 years that never would have watched the Netflix thing. And I think we got to remember there's going to be a lot of people that have never watched the original series of Daredevil. And that's something I think we got to keep in mind. But again, I think there's a lot of people like you, Raymond, who are like, I never watched it. I don't have enough time to go back and watch 40 hours of content. I'll just try to keep up. And for some people, it's working. And for some people, they're feeling a little bit lost in it. And that's totally understandable. But yeah, that's definitely a good approach to it, Raymond. All right. Next up, we've got Mickey, who also sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Mickey. Thank you for supporting us on that level, man. And Mickey writes, I believe it was the best decision to connect this show to the 2015 one. I just don't believe it would have been as strong of a story without that history. I disagree. And any and all drama would be based on borrowed trust from the last show. That's not true. Okay, I'm going to disagree with you on that, Mickey. I'm going to disagree with you on that. To say it couldn't be as good if it wasn't connected to the old one. That's not true at all. Guardians of the Galaxy wasn't based on anything. They just put out a Guardians of the Galaxy. And there you go. When they did Spider-Man Homecoming, it wasn't in any way, shape, or form connected to the Amazing Spider-Man that Andrew Garfield did. And it worked out just fine. It worked out great. I think you can start a new show, even if it's based on something that came before, and it could be awful or it could be great. I honestly don't think, personally, Mickey, I don't feel there's any basis to say if you did it as its own show, it couldn't possibly be good. I disagree with that. I think it's been proved that that's not true. It very well could be good. It could have been better. It could have been better. Or it could have been much, 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 much worse. I mean, we just don't know. But to say that the possibility wasn't there, that it could have earned its own following, and it couldn't have earned its own drama, and it couldn't have been fantastic right out of the gate, then fine. You know, and Howard is saying, and you're wrong, Howard. Howard is saying there's literally no point to not connect it. Yes, there is. Because it's already causing some problems with people. The point in not connecting it, and again, remember, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Get it? Daredevil, devil's advocate. Anyway, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I totally thought it was a good decision to connect it to the old one. Remember? Don't forget that. I believe it was the right decision to connect it to the old one. But to say there's no point not to connect it, totally wrong. Because the point is, if you're connecting it to the old one, then you're bringing all the baggage along with it. Now you have to make things that happened in the old show that may not be consistent with the MCU. You got to either just pretend it didn't happen or gloss over it. You got to wrestle with like story elements instead of being able to start with a clean slate. That's the point. By connecting it to the original series, you are putting some creative handcuffs on the filmmakers. You are. That's just a fact. Instead of saying you have a totally clean slate to have whatever story you want, you don't have to worry. Like one of the big things is everybody's like, why is Wilson Fisk out of prison? You notice they didn't even touch on that in the first 2 episodes? How is he even out of prison? Like the charges that he went to prison for, there's no way he would be out now. They wouldn't have had that problem if they had started with a clean slate. And again, remember, I am somebody who believes it was the right decision to connect it to the old one, but you're asking the question. To be able to just start off with a clean sheet and tell storytellers, create the best story that you want to come up with. Draw from whatever from the comics that you want, create something new and original, go for it. But one of the drawbacks of connecting it to the original series is one, you're alienating a lot of the new audience. We've already established that. But number two is you are handcuffing the storytellers. You're limiting a little bit what they can do because you have to now stay consistent with what happened in the original series. There's a lot of reasons for starting it fresh. Again, I think it was the right decision to connect it. But to say there would have been no point to giving them a fresh start, that's just factually incorrect. That's just wrong. There would have been some potential upside. Again, I think they made the right decision. You think they made the right decision. We're on the same side. But there would have been some benefits to starting fresh. There would have been some benefits. To just pretend like there wouldn't have been, I think is incorrect. So, but again, you and I are on the same side of this. It was the right decision to connect it. I just think there would have been clearly some advantages to not. Anyway. All right. Let's see. Next up. Larry Reed writes, "Hey, John, have you seen what Robert Rodriguez is doing? He's giving fans a chance to pitch him an idea for a movie. Think this is a good idea? Sounds like a cheap way to try to get people to work for you for free." I like Robert Rodriguez very much. I'm not trying to bash on him. Yeah, it sounds like he's just trying to get free labor out of people. I'm stuck. Hey, guys, you got any ideas for a movie? Let me know. It's not a bad idea. I mean, but here's, I have not seen this, but here's my big red flag right now. Here's my big red flag. My big red flag is, and this is where he could get himself into some legal trouble down the road. Let's say 10 years from now, Robert Rodriguez just comes up with an idea for a movie. This is why studios do not accept script pitches from people. If 10 years from now, 5 years from now, Robert Rodriguez on his own comes up with an idea for a movie and he decides to make that movie. But wait, back in 2025, he asked fans to send in their ideas for movies. And his new movie idea, strictly by coincidence, kind of looks similar to a story idea one of his fans sent to him 5 years ago. Guess what? He's wide open for a lawsuit now. Now, even if he didn't intentionally steal the idea from that person who sent it in back in 2025, he is now totally exposed to a lawsuit. That is why studios do not accept unsolicited scripts, because they don't want to 8 years from now make a movie and then have somebody from Bucksville, Indiana. Is that a real city? Anyway, from Bucksville, Indiana saying, "Hey, back in 2017, I sent you a script that kind of had a similar story. You stole my idea. I want $10 million," or something like that, right? So, yeah, I have not heard of this, and maybe he's got some safeties built into it, but it doesn't sound like a wise idea on his part. Just saying. But who knows? Maybe he's got some safeties built in there. All right. Next up, Mitch Matheson writes, "Is it true that Disney can't have live-action Spider-Man in any of its shows?" Correct. I kept waiting for him to show up. I guess he's in Queens. He's in Queens. New York is big. Yes, the head of Disney streaming and television, I believe his name is Brad Winderbaum. He's the head of Marvel streaming on Disney Plus, and he's the head of Marvel animation. We did a story on this last week where he straight up came out and said, "We are not allowed to have a live action Spider-Man in our TV shows." Period. We've been saying for a long time that we believed that was the case, that the rights thing was that there's no way Sony would let them do that. But anyway, Brad Winderbaum, again, head executive at MCU for all the MCU stuff that's on streaming, he came out and directly said, "We cannot use live action Spider-Man in our TV shows. We can do short form animation." That's what he said. They can't even make they can't make cartoons, like full length feature movies. He said, "We can do short form animation like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but they can't have him in the show." So anybody who was thinking that Spider-Man was going to show up in Daredevil, he's not. Just understand that he's not. Anyway, good question, man. Thanks for writing that in, Mitch. All right, our last question we're going to take before we take a quick break here comes to us from Mary, who writes, "John, fan of the show. Thank you so much, man. Daredevil wasn't a show I was excited about on Disney Plus since I wasn't a fan of it on Netflix. That feels like there'd be a second part." Nope, that was it. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, listen, I could totally understand why, if you were one of the many people, because it went off the air 7 years ago, if you were one of the many people who never watched the original Daredevil series, I totally understand why you wouldn't be excited about the return of it. I don't know if I would have been excited about Daredevil Born Again coming to Disney Plus had I not already watched the original Netflix series. So that's Totally understandable. Totally understandable. There's probably a lot of people like you. People who never saw the original series and went, okay, well, that looks interesting, but doesn't really look like it's for me, and didn't check it out. Totally get it. I would encourage it though. Seriously, the original Daredevil series on Netflix it was game changing. It was game changing. I would highly encourage you to go back and check it out if you ever feel like you have the time, but don't feel like you need to. All right, guys, listen. We're going to take a quick minute here and thank a couple of sponsors of our show here today, and then we will come back and continue to take your questions. Now, I'm going to let you know, I'm going to leave the super chats open while the ads are playing, but after we come back from the ad break, I'm going to probably turn off the super chats. So you've got about 2 or 3 minutes now to go grab yourself a bite to eat, go grab a drink, talk amongst yourselves, fire in your questions if you have any, because we're going to be turning off the super chats in a minute. But before we do all that, we're going to take a minute and thank the 2 sponsors of our show here today, our friends at PrizePicks and Hungryroot. Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, PrizePicks. All right, guys, if you're watching basketball this season and not playing PrizePicks, you are seriously missing out. This is hands down the most fun way to get in on the action. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats like points, rebounds, or assists for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's available in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. This week, I'm looking at the board and I'm going with Luka Doncic for more than 25 points and Jason Tatum for more than 8 rebounds. That's my lineup. Simple, quick, and way more fun to watch the games. And on top of that, PrizePicks hooks you up with awesome promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get player projections at a discount for even bigger value. So download the app today and use the code Campea to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, just play $5 and you get $50 automatically. PrizePicks, run your game. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Hungryroot. You know, grocery shopping used to be one of the biggest struggles. Between your busy schedule and wanting to eat healthier, it just feels impossible to stay on top of everything. But all that changes when you discover Hungryroot, the easiest way to eat healthy without the hassles. Hungryroot is like having your own personal grocery shopper. They take care of the weekly shopping for you, recommending healthy, high-quality groceries tailored to your tastes, nutritional preferences, and even health goals. They've got it all: smoothies, snacks for the kids, ready-to-eat meals, and even supplements. For me, Hungryroot is absolutely a game changer, guys. My health goals have become so much easier to stick to. I love how they personalize my cart every week and even get smart about my preferences as I go. It's honestly stress-free and so simple. You're going to love Hungryroot as much as I do. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/Campea and use the code Campea. That's hungryroot.com/Campea, using the code Campea to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/Campea, code Campea. And thank you to our friends at PrizePicks and Hungryroot for sponsoring today's episode of Open Mic. All right, guys, let's get back to your questions here, shall we? Just so you know, I have turned off the super chats. We've got all the super chats that we need right now, so we're going to get through the ones that we still have. So let's get on with it, shall we? We're going to get things picked up here with Jerome, who writes, do you think Echo will ever appear in Daredevil? I mean, she's been referenced, right? Didn't she shoot you in the face? Best line of the show. That was the best. I tried to mentor somebody. Didn't she shoot you in the face? Such a great line. I'm going to guess no. That show went over like a lead balloon. Now, it would totally make sense for Echo to show up. Like, it wouldn't be inconceivable for Echo to show up in the show. My guess is, I don't think there's any reason to have her show up, so I'm going to guess, just to guess, Jerome, but I'm going to guess no. All right, Seconds from Disaster writes, I don't think bringing Daredevil into the MCU ruins anything as long as they keep his story somewhat isolated and use him in other projects only when needed. I mean, I think long-term, I agree. I agree. I think it's just like, though, again, it is a high price tag to alienate certain viewers. It's never good for your cinematic universe to have somebody sit down and start to watch something and feel like, I feel lost, and click, turn it off. That's not a good thing. But I agree with you. I think it can still work out long-term. And I still think it can work even for this show if over the next few episodes, they fill in the background a little bit for new viewers. And if they can use the next few episodes to really make a new viewer feel like they're totally in and they're totally on board, I think it can still work and work well. And by the way, I also agree with you. I think they're going to use Daredevil very isolatedly. I think you're only going to see Daredevil in quick cameos in movies, maybe here and there, but mostly he's going to be confined to the spectrum and the scope of the Daredevil show on Disney Plus. Because they're going to be making a show every year, he said. Right? Brad Winterbaum announced that you're not going to have to wait 2 years for new seasons. So that means, listen, they're already shooting Daredevil season 2 right now. So they're going to have Charlie Cox tied up just with making the show. But we'll see how it all works out. All right. Next, we've got, where are we at? Anthony C. writes, I might be reading way too much into it. We as film fans do that. But at the Oscars, Downey was clearly sporting his Stark goatee. You think he'll play Tony in Doomsday or Secret Wars as well, or simply will Doom look identical to Tony? You're reading way too much into it. You're reading far too much into it. He has sported that look many times when they were and were not shooting Marvel stuff at all. That's just the Robert Downey Jr. look, man. That's just his look. So I think, I think you're reading too much in. Now, look, that aside, is it possible that we could see him as Tony in Doomsday or Secret Wars? Sure. Yeah, that's possible. I don't think it'll be a primary role, but yeah, I think that's possible. But that had nothing to do with Robert Downey Jr. had a goatee. Well, he often has a goatee. You know what I'm saying, Anthony? So I think you might be reading too much into it, but that doesn't mean he might not. I wouldn't count on it. My guess is they won't, but it's possible. You never know. All right. Next up, we've got Tony Sheets writes, a little over 6 years, October 19th, 2018. Oh, I assume you mean like when the show went off the air. Yeah, so we're 6.5 years ago. That show went off the air. It's a kind of a long gap for people to be caught up on. So thanks for that, Tony. All right, next up, Spencer Anthony writes, the Daredevil premiere was great. I thought so. The story felt biblical. Love the CGI hyperrealism element as well. Thanks for your excellent coverage, Sean. Oh, thank you for that, Spencer. Yeah, listen, I mentioned this in the after show, but I was looking forward to Daredevil Born Again, but my one fear I had going into it was it sounded like the showrunner didn't understand what made the original Daredevil show great. What made the original Daredevil show great wasn't the action. The action was wonderful, but any idiot, any high school kid can say, let's have a cool choreographed fight scene. Anybody can do that. What not everybody can do is to create the drama around it and to create characters and depth and narrative. And it sounded like the showrunner was just like, oh, we're going to have so much action. I'm like, we're not going to have all these people just talky. I'm like, the very best scenes of Daredevil are the talky. Like, that's what makes the show great. And I was afraid that he wasn't going to understand that. But then I watched the first 2 episodes and I thought the first 2 episodes were awesome. I really enjoyed it. I personally really enjoyed it. Now, then again, don't forget that even She-Hulk started strong. And look what happened there. Secret Invasion, I thought, started strong. Look how that went. Marvel has never had a problem starting strong with their shows. I feel like they've all started strong. The problem is after they start pretty good, they then, like She-Hulk and Secret Invasion, they then go boo, and they go completely downhill. Let's see what happens with Daredevil. Hopefully they're able to keep that momentum going, because I really did like the first couple of episodes. All right. Next up, we got 24K Logan. Sends in a $20 chat. Thank you so much, 24K. Appreciate that, man. And he writes, hey, John, thanks for informing me about getting an agent and becoming a WGA member. I will be submitting a script for a chance to get a grant and some professional industry help. Also, Pulp Fiction or Shawshank, choose one. Easy, Shawshank, no questions asked. Pulp Fiction's magnificent. Don't get me wrong. Pulp Fiction is magnificent. But Shawshank, it's not my personal number one film, but there's an argument to be made that Shawshank might be simply the greatest movie ever made. Shawshank is a perfect movie. I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect film. It is absolutely in my top 10 greatest of all time. I mean, when you're talking about things like Pulp Fiction, it's not far out of my top 10 of all time. Pulp Fiction is a brilliant film, all-time great classic. Yeah. But Shawshank is perfection. Shawshank is absolute, utter perfection of a movie. There are no flaws in that movie. There's not a single flaw. You can't make a movie better than that. It's sort of thing. So anyway, yes, for me, and again, I say this with deep reverence for Pulp Fiction, deep reverence for Pulp Fiction, but you compare almost anything to Shawshank. I'm going to say Shawshank, like 10 days out of 9. All right, next up. We've got Dr. Stinky, writes, hey, sorry it's been a while. I wanted to ask if you're keeping up with the It Ends With Us drama. As a diehard Ryan Reynolds fan, it sucks. Thoughts, don't care. TMZ nonsense. He said, she said, has no impact on any upcoming movies. I only ever care about any of the stuff that has any impact on any upcoming movies, and it doesn't. So I don't really comment on it. Don't really care about it. All right, Jason writes, will we see Elektra in Born Again? I don't think so. Well, now, wait a minute. Let me rephrase that. In Born Again Season 1, I don't think so. I do not think we will see Elektra again in Born Again Season 1. Could we see Elektra in Born Again Season 2 or 3? Maybe. But I personally am not expecting to see her in Season 1. I just don't see the point. I don't see the purpose. There's like no place in here right now. You know what the story needs right now? Another love interest coming in from the past. Feels like they've got enough going on with the show right now that they don't need to bring in Elektra as well. Again, maybe in Season 2 or 3, but right now my guess would be no. All right. Next up, we've got Victor Rodriguez who writes, I don't see the issue with them connecting it to the Netflix series. If they are already watching Born Again on Disney Plus, they can watch the past 3 seasons. See, here's the problem with that, Victor. Here's the problem with that. That's a little bit unreasonable. Because you're literally talking, it's not like, just take your lunch break and go watch Daredevil season 1, 2, and 3. You're talking about like a 30 to 40 hour commitment to watch something. That's a full work week. It's not that easy for people. Go back and watch this 10-year-old, go back and watch 3 seasons of this 10-year-old show. It's not as simple, Victor, as just saying, just go watch the last 3 seasons. That could be a 2-month-long process. And they probably have other things to do with their lives, and they probably have other shows they're watching and stuff like that. So yes, you could do that, but is it wise to create new content that requires the audience to go back and do 30, 35, 40 hours of homework, right? Now, Mario brings up something. This is something Ann and I did. Just watch a recap video on YouTube. You know what? Before we watched Daredevil Born Again, a few days before Born Again dropped, Ann and I were like, hey, it's been over 6 years. Let's sit down and watch one of the recaps. And we watched like a 30, 40-minute recap. It's like, okay, yeah, great. But listen, that's great. One of these YouTube recaps is great if you're somebody who already watched it before and you're just refreshing. It doesn't help you a lot if you never saw the show. You'll get like quick little bullet points, which is an awesome refresher if you did watch the show originally, like Ann and I did. But if you're like on square zero, it's not going to help a lot. If you've never seen Daredevil, these quick little recaps of 3 full seasons of the show You'll get a couple of the bullet points, but it's going to not give you any of the nuance. And that's where most people get lost. Most people don't get lost and not understand a highlight bullet point. They get lost in not understanding the nuance. So I'm not sure that would really help people a lot. Again, I thought it was very valuable as somebody doing a quick refresher on the series, but I don't know if it'll help a lot of people if they had never seen the series at all in the first place. That's just my thought on that. Anyway, thanks for that, Victor. Next up, we've got Jerome, who writes, do you think Secret Invasion could have worked as a Captain Marvel movie with Nick Fury working with Carol to stop the Skrulls? I mean, here's the thing. It could have worked just as it was if they wrote the script better. A lot of people will ask me, hey, do you think this terrible movie could have worked if they put this character in it? The answer is no. Then it just would have been a terrible movie with that character in it. It doesn't change anything. It's still a bad movie. Secret Invasion, listen, the elevator pitch of Nick Fury's actions in helping to save the Skrulls comes back to haunt him as over the years he's been unable to fulfill a promise to them to create a permanent home. As a result, several Skrulls who become disenfranchised and disillusioned and angry and have decided to take Earth for their own. Now Nick needs to race against the clock before Skrulls take over the world. Okay, that's the elevator pitch for Secret Invasion. That story could have worked. That elevator pitch as the bones for your story totally could have worked. That right there has the bones for a really good show, if you write it correctly. The problem with Secret Invasion wasn't that it didn't have Captain Marvel, although Captain Marvel could have fit into that elevator pitch, right? Because she also has the connection with the Skrulls and all that kind of stuff. But since the fundamental problems with Secret Invasion was just, it was badly written, badly structured, and if you had just added Captain Marvel into it, it just would have been a badly written, badly structured show with Captain Marvel in it too. You could have dropped Tony Stark in there. It wouldn't have made a difference, right? Like, they had a good idea for a show. The idea was there. It just wasn't executed, Jerome. You know what I'm saying? All right. Thanks for asking, man. Next up, Cam Ivy writes, salutations, John. Headed to Vegas this weekend with my wifey. Ann and I were just there last weekend. Any recommendations on food, activities, or any other experiences? Thanks, and keep bringing on the filthy. Ann and I are going back to Vegas like the next 2 weeks. We're going to go next weekend just for fun. And then, of course, me, Ray, Ann, Rob, and Cody Miller, we're all going to Vegas again the weekend after that for CinemaCon. Bah! Cannot wait. My favorite event of the year is CinemaCon. Can't believe it's here again already. Anyway. Yeah, I go to Vegas a lot. Ann and I go like 8, 9, 10 times a year. I would highly recommend, you know what? Let me see if I can find it. New Asian buffet in Resorts World. They just opened a new, this is it. They just opened a new restaurant in Resorts World called Genting Palace. Guys, I don't even like seafood. I'm not a seafood guy. This restaurant is insane. For an all-you-can-eat high-end Vegas buffet, all-you-can-eat high-end Vegas buffets like Bacchanal and Caesars, that can run you $95 to $100 a person. It's worth every penny because it's like all the food in Bacchanal. It's all the crab legs and all the whatever. It's all the most expensive food. Like, it's, believe me, it's worth it. But this place, it was $65 a person. Still very steep. But compared to other of the high-end buffets in Vegas, it was actually 25%, 30% cheaper. And the food, guys, it didn't have nearly the selection that the buffet at Wynn has, or nearly the like not remotely near the selection that Bacchanal has at Caesars. But everything on their buffet was crazy delicious. Crazy delicious. If you and your wife want your higher end night out for dinner, and you want to have like one really good, nice night out for dinner, and you're willing to drop like $130 for dinner for you and your wife on a high end night out, I can't recommend Genting Palace enough. I also can't recommend highly enough Bacchanal and Caesars. It's amazing. Also, Gordon Ramsay's Burger is great. They have 2 locations, one in Flamingo and one in Planet Hollywood. Gordon Ramsay's Burger is insanely tasty. It's insanely great. As far as activities go, go to, they have a big shopping center out there where Tiger Woods just opened a new mini golf place. I can't remember the name of it. Go just Google Tiger Woods Mini Golf Las Vegas. You'll find the name of it. It's crazy fun. You spend like $40, but that gives you a pass for mini golf for the whole day. And they have restaurants and a bar there too. It's a lot of fun. They have the pinball, not ping pong museum. Pinball museum is out there. There's a lot of great stuff to do in Vegas. That's why Ann and I go so often. It's just a really, really fun place to go. All right. Next up, we've got Jedediah Elias writes, have you seen the new first look footage from A24 Warfare based on Ray Mendoza, who worked on AG Civil War? I have no idea. Sorry, Jedediah, I have no idea what we're talking about. Please don't use acronyms in questions you guys send in, because then I got to think about it. So I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, unfortunately. All right, next up. Caden Jones writes, hey, John, first time commenting. Thank you for writing in, man. Love the show. Been watching for over a year now. Do you think Zemo will return in an upcoming Marvel movie? Whew. I feel like Adi Shankar now. I'm going to guess yes. I'll be honest with you. As somebody who loves Civil War, I didn't think Zemo was all that great of a villain, to be honest with you. I really didn't think he was all that great of a villain. But I know a lot of people loved him though, so that's great. But everybody loved him in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Everybody loved Zemo in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I loved him in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I mean, how many months did that dance meme of Zemo in the dance club? Like, you're cool. What was that one meme? You're cool, but are you Zemo in the nightclub cool? Like, everybody loved him in that. So I'm going to guess, again, pure guess, and I don't know where they would do it, but I'm going to guess yes, you will see him again. Again, that's my guess. All right, next up. We got Jedediah Lyskin writes, the best part about Mickey 17 was Pattinson. How long do you think until he gets that award status performance? Plays completely different characters here. You know what? He's not far off. I still remember when they announced him as Batman and everybody was like, Twilight boy. You could tell they never watched any of his other work since Twilight. Like, they didn't watch all those indie films and smaller projects that made people like Christopher Nolan line up to want to put him in their movies. Every filmmaker started wanting to have that Robert Pattinson kid in their movies. And he is exceptional. He's an exceptional performer. And so now look, I don't put him on Timothée Chalamet's level. He's not on Timothée Chalamet's level. But I very much think there are going to be wins, don't know, but he's going to get roles. Like, he's now been in films with several Academy Award winners. He's been in Christopher Nolan films. He's now been in Bong Joon-ho's movies. I mean, he's going to get Oscar nominations. He's still really early in his career, but he's going to get them. 100% he is. 100% he is. All right. Let's see. Jerome writes, do you think the Oscars will ever change their rules on who qualifies for Best Supporting Actor nominations? Yes. I don't think it's going to be anytime soon, like not in the next year or two. But they have to at some point. For those you don't know, basically every category at the Oscars has a very strict set of rules about what does and does not qualify, right? But the category of Best Lead Actor and Best Supporting Actor, or Best Lead Actress and Best Supporting Actress, those categories are they have no guidelines. And there have been several times that an actor who was clearly one of the leads of a movie, the studio just went, yeah, but they can't win. So let's just decide and let's just put them in the Best Supporting Actor category. What are you talking about? That character is not a supporting actor in that movie. They're a lead actor in that movie. Like, that has happened many times. They've even created a term for it. It's called category fraud. And we have seen several examples of category fraud happen at the Oscars. One of the biggest examples, not the biggest examples of it, but one of the biggest examples of it was Christian Bale in, what was it called? Fighter, the one he did with Mark Wahlberg? The Fighter? I think that was it. Anyway, correct me if I'm wrong on the title of that. He was a lead in that film. He had every bit of the amount of screen time, dialogue as Mark Wahlberg did. It's the main poster of it is him and Mark Wahlberg. He was a lead in the film. And yet, but they knew he couldn't win if they put him in lead, because that was the same year as King's Speech. And Colin Firth, nobody was going to beat Colin Firth that year. Colin Firth was going to win Best Lead Actor that year. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew it. So what the studio did was, well, he can't win, so let's put him in the Best Supporting Actor category. And they put him in Best Supporting, and he won, but he shouldn't have even been in that category. He literally this isn't Christian Bale's fault. This is the studio's fault. It's not Christian Bale's fault. Had nothing to do with him. But Christian Bale won the Oscar, and he robbed somebody who actually did a supporting role from winning their Oscar. So do I think they'll change it? I think they will have to change it at some point. I just don't expect, Jerome, for it to happen in, like, say, in the next year or two or anything like that. All right. Next up. Zach Dunbar writes, do you think the video game curse is over yet? I think it's pretty much over. I'm not going to say we're 100% on the way there yet. The video game curses, of course, any video game movie automatically sucks. It's been that way for decades and decades and decades. And before anybody says, what about Wreck-It Ralph? Wreck-It Ralph was not a video game movie. A video game movie is where you have a popular video game and then you decide to make a movie out of it. Wreck-It Ralph was not that. Wreck-It Ralph was not based on a video game. Anyway, but now we have Fallout, Last of Us, right? So we're getting now. We've got the freaking God of War series coming from the greatest showrunner in television, Ronald D. Moore, is doing that. I mean, it looks like, if we're not out of the curse yet, the light is at the end of the tunnel. The light is at the end of the tunnel. All right. Next up, Johnny Weiner writes, have you checked out the new Spider-Man 2 game? I have not. It has Miles and Peter stopping Kraven, hunting down a worthy foe, Venom. Wish we had this one as one of the movies. I remember when they first announced that they were going to do a Kraven movie, I said, this is the perfect time. Like, because Sony, they had all these movies, right? They had Madam Web, they had Kraven, they had Morbius, they had Venom, but they didn't cross any of them over in their own little universe. And I remember when they announced that they were doing Craven, I remember thinking, what better is there? What is the most lethal thing to hunt in this world? Venom, and have him hunting Venom. I thought that would have been a great idea. They obviously didn't do it. I still think they should have, but yeah, there you go. All right. Howard D writes, the answer to the main question is hell no. I don't know that it's that simple. I mean, it's hell no to you if you already watched the original series of Daredevil and all that kind of stuff. But for a lot of people who never watched that 10-year-old TV show, there are a bunch of people who are feeling a little alienated by it. So I think it was the right decision to do what they're doing. But you got to acknowledge that it has some consequences that they've done it this way, even though I agree with you that it was the right decision to make. All right. Next up, Robert Clapp writes, I don't take you guys. I've announced 15, 16, 17 times on my videos. I don't take these odd 2 questions, just so you know. All right. Mike Thompson writes, I think Daredevil Born Again would have been fine for new viewers or people who'd forgotten if they would have opened with a brief recap of the series. Here's the thing though, Mike, I don't know that you can catch people up on 30 to 40 hours of dramatic content in a quick previously on Daredevil in just 2 or 3 minutes. I don't know that that would have solved the problem. Again, it would have been good as a quick refresher for people who had already seen the series, but I don't know if just a quick 3-minute previously on, right? I don't know that would have done it for people who didn't watch a 10-year-old TV show. It may not have, it wouldn't have hurt. It certainly wouldn't have hurt, but I don't know if that would have solved the problem. All right. Next up, we got Jerome, who writes, what do you think will have to happen for more people of color to win and get nominated for Oscars besides adding more diversity to film? I think they have to be given better roles. And we are seeing that happen. Now, look, I know I got some people really upset with me back a couple of years ago when the Oscars So White stuff was going on. My position was and still is, it is not the Oscars' job. It is not the Oscars' job to give awards to people in minority demographics. That's not their job. Their job is to give the award to whoever they thought did best that year. That's the job. And it should never not be the job. I said, the problem is you've got a Hollywood movie system that for over a century has practiced this agenda of exclusion. Nobody pretends it doesn't exist, it didn't exist, or doesn't still exist. I mean, we've heard from all types of studio heads and everything who have been studio heads over the years acknowledging, yeah, like for a long time, we don't give the best roles to black actors. We don't give the best roles to women. We don't give the best roles to that, right? Because for like a century, Hollywood has had an active, strong, aggressive agenda of exclusion. And I said, the problem isn't the Oscars. The problem is the whole Hollywood system needing to get rid and tear down that agenda of exclusion. You got to tear it down and start letting our movies be more reflective of the actual society we live in. Give the opportunity for more characters, more scripts, stuff like that, that has a wider, more diverse scope to it, because that can be very profitable. So what has to happen is that Hollywood needs to continue to not exercise that agenda of exclusion. They need to, because they've started the process of tearing it down, but they need to not stop tearing it down. Because the moment you fall asleep at the wheel, suddenly they just going right back to the old agenda. They need to continue tearing that agenda down. The agenda of exclusion has been a blight on the history of Hollywood, again, for over a century. And there's still parts of it there today, and it needs to continue to be torn down. And until that happens, you're not going to see it reflected in the Oscars, because there aren't enough people getting those roles, getting those scripts, getting those movies to offer the opportunity to win an Oscar. The job isn't the Oscars' job. It's Hollywood's job, and they got to fix it. Anyway, that, as a non-sociologist who is not an expert in this, that is just, you ask me, so I'm just giving my useless opinion on it. And that is my personal useless opinion on it. All right. Next up. Let's see, Jerome writes, what did you think of Zoe Saldana saying, sorry that Amelia Perez offended some of y'all, but I don't agree with your opinion? What's there to think about it? That's a perfectly legitimate thing to say. So I don't really have an opinion about it other than that. I think it speaks for itself. All right. Jedediah Elias writes, a Mitchells versus the Machines 2 rumored at Netflix. I'd watch that. According to a Sony employee's LinkedIn profile, said he was working on it. Being a childhood fan of films was relatable and deeply emotional. Love Katie too. Listen, I'll tell you what. Mitchells versus the Machines was one of those films that I had no expectations for. Quite frankly, it didn't look good. I'm just being honest with you. Mitchells versus Machines did not look good. I didn't think the trailers were good. I had zero expectations. So when it first came out, I didn't watch it. But then Ann and I kept hearing some pretty good things about it. And so we had a night free one night. We said, let's book that night and watch Mitchells versus the Machines. Okay. I loved it. I don't think it's like the greatest animated movie of all, but I loved it. I thought it was charming and sweet and infinitely funny. I thought it was a really good movie. So if they do decide to do a sequel to it, 100% count me on board. I'm 100% on board for that. All right. Last question comes into us from Abe Torres, who writes, I have to ask, since I'm not a Daredevil fan, but why Elektra wasn't in the show, and if she's in it, how would she fit in? Well, if you're asking why wasn't she in Daredevil, she was in Daredevil. She was in the original Netflix series. Elektra was absolutely a part of it. If you're asking why she hasn't been in Daredevil this season, the answer to that is always, why would she be there? So listen, somebody else wrote in and asked if I thought Daredevil might pop up this season. And it's possible. Again, it is possible Daredevil pops up in this season. I don't think she will, but she might. If you're asking why doesn't she, well, why would she? Like you come up with a story. Clearly this story is going to be about Muse and Kingpin and Daredevil. I don't know that there's room for Elektra in there. If you're asking that. So if you're asking why wasn't she in the original series, she was in the original series. If you're asking why she isn't in this one, number one, we don't know that she's not going to be in this one. Probably won't be, but she might. And number two, why would she be there? Like, if you know the Muse story, Elektra really doesn't have that, any kind of part of that. So there's really no reason to force feed her in this, but you could always bring her back in season 2 or 3 if they want to do, you know what I'm saying? All right. Guys, that's all the super chats. You guys remember I turned off the super chats a while ago. That's all the super chats we have come in, but I'm still going to take a few minutes here and take some more questions from you guys if you're in the live chat. So here's what I'm going to do. Look in the live chat. I just put in a little chat. If you have a question that you'd like me to address, go ahead and put in all capital letters, question, colon, and then your question. That way I know you're asking me a question. Just so you know, don't go, why didn't you read mine? I'm not going to read all of them. I'm just going to pick out a few and address a couple. Let's see. This one comes to us from John A.M. who writes, question, do you think the negative reaction towards the casting of Snape would be greatly lessened if J.K. Rowling would have come out to show her approval and support? If anything, I think, first of all, I don't think there's that much negative reaction to the casting. I think there's some very loud people who are reacting negatively to the casting, but I don't think there's actually that much. I actually think if JK would have come out in support of it, I think it might have increased the negative reaction to it. Just being honest. I'm not saying that makes sense. Yeah, I think it would actually increase the negative reaction to it if she came out and supported it. I don't know that for sure. All right. Tom Weinberg writes, favorite use of visual effects in a movie. That's too broad of a question, but I know this isn't specifically what you're asking, but I'm going to answer it a bit of a different way. The most significant movie in history, as far as visual effects go, is a terrible movie, but is Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, as bad as the movie was in general, signified the single greatest leap forward in visual effects uses in movies of any movie that has ever happened. Obviously, since then, there have been movies with better visual effects. That movie is super old now, but no one movie has ever come out and been such a huge leap forward. They did so many things in that movie from a visual effects perspective that had never even been conceived of before. And so I know that's not the exact question you're asking, but I think because it was the biggest leap forward ever in visual effects, I'm going to say that one. I'm going to say that one. All right. Let's see. Let's pick out a couple more here. Watson Duncan writes, how excited are you for Last of Us Season 2? I can barely speak. I'm so excited for Last of Us Season 2. Now, I've seen some people in the live chat say that they just dropped a new trailer. I haven't seen it yet. I'll get around to doing that after we're done the show, but I am ridiculously excited for the new season of Last of Us. I cannot believe how good that first one was. Black Bono Lala writes, who would you pick as Batman for the DCU? X actor and X role. It's pointless to pick who you would have as Batman when you don't know the script. Right? I said this all the time. Like, would you have said, when you heard that Christopher Nolan was making another Batman movie, and who do you think should be Joker? Would anybody have picked Heath Ledger? No, nobody would have picked Heath Ledger. But maybe if you had read the script and you saw what Christopher Nolan was doing with the Joker, maybe then you would have gone, you know what? Heath Ledger could fit that really well. But just going in blind, nobody would have picked Heath Ledger. Nobody. And it's arguably the greatest single performance in any comic book movie ever, is that. If you don't know what they're going for with the character, it's pointless to try to guess who should play it. Right? So I do not have somebody who should be the DCEU's Batman because I don't know what kind of Batman they're going to have. I'd absolutely need to know that. So the only thing I care about is whoever they pick, is it somebody we've already seen as a really good actor? As long as you get somebody who's a really good actor, I'll trust them that they've picked a person who fits the character they're going for. So that's how I feel about it, Black Bono. But you've been a viewer of mine for a long time, so you've already heard me say that before, right? All right. Let's see. Millie Magna writes, what do you think is more likely, Ant-Man 4 or Eternals 2? Eternals 2. Just for the record, I don't think either are going to happen, but we are going to, I think there's no chance we get an Ant-Man 4. Kevin Feige loves Eternals. As long as he loves Eternals, there's a chance we get Eternals 2. Now, that being said, I think we 100% are going to see Ant-Man again, just maybe not in Ant-Man Season 4. And I do believe we are 100% going to see characters from Eternals again, but not necessarily Eternals 2. But if I had to pick one, I think the one that's most likely is Eternals 2. Let's see. Question, would Alan Ritchson make a good B? I have no idea what we're talking about anyway. What episode do you think, this is from Timmy KDD who writes, what episode do you think Matt will fully be Daredevil again? Probably in episode 3 or 4. I'm going to guess episode 3 and 4, because at the end of episode 2, Daredevil came back out, right? Daredevil, who he had suppressed for over a year, Daredevil came back out. So I don't think we're going to have to wait much longer. To see him. Anyway, Zulkathy writes, what's your early prediction for the Minecraft movie box office? I don't know. I mean, it looks terrible. It looks absolutely terrible. And I love Jason Momoa and I love Jack Black. And I mean, but it looks awful. I don't really have a number yet. I'm just going to say low. My guess right now is probably low at any rate. See, the fanboy writes, do you think Joel Kinnaman will return as Rick Flag? I know Ray would love that, but I'm going to guess no. I'm all for it, but I'm going to guess no. I'm going to guess he won't. Let's see here. Oh, this is easy. I'm Jay. What makes more money, Spider-Man 4 or Avengers Doomsday? Easy. That's going to be Avengers Doomsday. No questions asked. Let's see. Jason and Phil writes, would it be better if it was just season 4 instead of a new show? I'm assuming you're talking about Daredevil. Maybe, but again, if you call it Daredevil season 4, a lot of people aren't even going to check it out because it's a 10-year-old show. And there's just a lot of people. I know it's hard to imagine in our little bubble that we live in. It's hard to imagine anybody hasn't watched Daredevil, but most people haven't watched Daredevil. And so if you just come out and say Daredevil season 4, I think there's a lot of people that wouldn't even check it out. You call it Daredevil Born Again, and it sounds like it's a new series. You'll get more people checking it out. So I honestly, no, I don't think it would have been better to call it, not for a 10-year-old show. I don't think it would have been better to call it Daredevil season 4. All right, just take a couple more here. Let's see. Jonathan Hyatt says, what's your favorite Chalamet performance? I think he's talented, but not quite Day-Lewis level yet. I agree. He's not Daniel Day-Lewis level yet. Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest of all time. He is the Bret Hart of acting. He is with nobody's out. Guys, I'm sorry. Nobody else is close. Nobody else is close. Daniel Day-Lewis is the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. He's the Bret Hart of acting. Nobody comes close. I think Timothée Chalamet is the one actor today that has the potential. I don't think there's any other actor working today that even has the potential to be the next Daniel Day-Lewis. I think Timothée Chalamet has that potential. He ain't there yet. He ain't there yet, but he's only getting better and better and better and better. His performance in Dune Part 2, amazing. His performance in A Complete Unknown is, I still love, why am I freezing on the name of the one he did with Steve Carell? Dear Boy, Sweet Boy, My Boy, Oh Boy. What's the name of it again? What's the name of the movie he did with Steve Carell? Sweet Boy. Anyway, his performance in that. And don't forget, Beautiful Boy. That's what it is. Thank you. Jesus was the one who put that in first. Beautiful Boy. And like the one that really put him on the map, Call Me By Your Name. Like that's the one where everybody like, how can this kid be this good, this young? I mean, oh my God, just look at the last year. He had Wonka, which seriously, guys, Wonka was wonderful. And he was so good in it. In just last year, he had Wonka, Dune 2, and A Complete Unknown. There literally is no limit to how good this kid could be. So I agree. He's not there yet. He's not Daniel Day-Lewis yet. I agree 100%. But he's on the trajectory to get there. He's absolutely on the trajectory to get there. Now, whether he does get there or not, we'll find out. Let's see. Last one I'll take here. Anthony writes, question, what is the hardest thing about filmmaking other than the editing and the actual filming of the movie? The hardest part about filmmaking other than the editing and the actual filming of the movie. All right. As somebody who has dabbled in all that, like Tim just said something that's very true. Finance. I mean, listen, everybody can make a movie. Everybody's got an idea for a movie. Everybody's got the next Oscar winner. Everybody thinks they're going to be great. But you got to get money. So financing is definitely 100% very, very difficult. Getting somebody to agree to give you money to make a movie, very hard. Very, very hard. because you got to convince that person you're going to be able to get them their money back with a little bit of profit. And let's face it, most movies are never going to make any money. So that's tough. I was going to say, and it would kind of include financing, but is the producing of the movie. The actual pulling it all together. Getting the script, getting your director on board, getting your cinematographer, finding your actors, securing locations, coming up with budgets, and scheduling. Just the producing of a movie is so hard. It's so hard. I've written and directed a couple little projects. But I found that the hardest part was the producing. It's also the part that I personally like the most. That's why when a lot of people ask me if I think I'll make another movie, I think I will. And again, thank you to everybody who supported Movie Trailers, A Love Story. I never imagined that movie was going to do as well as it did. Thank you to everybody who got it. And you can still go get it. Go on Amazon Prime and search for Movie Trailers, A Love Story. It's still there. But I think I decided after that if I do make another film, it'll probably be producing as a producer. I'm going to focus on being a producer than as a and once I have time to do that, I will do that again. I will do that again. But yeah, man, like the actual producing, the pulling all those elements together for me was probably the hardest part, and part of that is financing too. All right, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much to all you guys who tuned in to watch and hang out with me today. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in the questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you also supported our channel by doing it. And to all of you guys, thank you guys so very much for your support. As always, guys, I did the best that I could. Hopefully you found today's couple hours that we spent here fun. I hope it was at any rate. Forgive me for any mistakes that I made. That'll do it for us for now, guys. Don't forget, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Leave comments below. Even if you just have a quick thought, leave your favorite emoji. I don't care. Leave a thought. Click the thumbs up. All that kind of stuff helps appease the YouTube algorithm gods and helps spread our videos out to even more audience members. Anyway, guys, we'll be back again on Monday with the next installment of the John Campea Show. Hopefully you guys will come join me and Rob and Chris and Jonathan and Ray and all of us. We're looking forward to having you guys then. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.